Okay, so the first one we're doing is using the law of detachment. And so remember, that means it's an if-then statement followed by a separate statement. Okay, so if there is lightning, then it is not safe to be out in the open. So that's your if-then statement. And then it says, Marla sees lightning from the soccer field. And the lightning matches the front. So because the front matches is the reason that we can use the law, the answer would be Marla is not safe to be outside. Is not safe to be outside. So again, on the law of detachment type problems, you have an if-then, then you have a separate one. Marla is a specific person and says sees lightning, which matches the front. So it's not safe to be outside, or to be out in the open if you want to be technical. Any questions? All right. If a figure is a square, then its sides have equal length. Figure ABCD has sides of equal length. So then, like, a common mistake would actually be then say figure ABCD is a square. But unfortunately, we can't do that because the equal length matches the back. The back matches, not the front. So what that means is your answer is no conclusion. So make sure you see the difference between these two. On the first one, the front matched. On the other one, the back matched, and you can't draw a conclusion. Other than that, it's like pretty simple. Okay. So then there's the law of syllogism. This is where your middles match. That's like the easy way to put it. Or you could say the back of the first matches the front of the second. So you can use the law of syllogism if your middles match. If a whole number ends in 0, then it's divisible by 10. If a whole number is divisible by 10, then it's divisible by 5. So, of course, this divisible by 10 matches, and so that's what we would end up with. It's if a whole number ends in 0, then it is divisible by 5. Okay, the next one, if ray AB and ray AD are opposite rays, then the two rays form a straight angle. If two rays are opposite rays, then the two rays form a straight angle. So again, it's the back that matches, not the front. So that's going to be no conclusion. Oops, no conclusion. Again, since the backs match. Any questions about that? All right, so then the next one is using both laws. So when you use both laws, it's going to be a longer type question. This one says, what can you conclude from the given information? What's your reasoning? If a river is more than 4,000 miles long, then it's longer than the Amazon. If a river is longer than the Amazon, then it's the longest river in the world. The Nile is 4,132 miles long. So what we notice is this one matches this one. So it's like the back of one of them matches the front of the other. And so your combined sentence would be if a river is more than 4,000 miles long, then it's the longest in the world. Then it is the longest, I'm abbreviating a little bit, longest in the world. Now you take your combined sentence and then read your detached. Then read your detached. And see if it matches. Okay, so it says the Nile is 4,132 miles long, which is bigger than this. And so we can now say the Nile is the longest river in the world. The Nile is the longest river in the world. Any questions about that? All right. So then in that problem, does it matter if you use the law of syllogism first or detachment first, and explain? So this we want, yes, syllogism must be used first to combine the sentences. Syllogism must be used first to combine the sentences. Syllogism must be used first to combine the sentences. Oh, thank you. Okay, any questions? All right. Now we're going to go to the vocab support. This law of logic states that if you start with a hypothesis of a true conditional, then the conclusion is true. So here's your figure, and it says if a figure is a square, then it's a rectangle. Then it says this figure is a square, which means the hypothesis is true. So your conclusion is this figure is also a rectangle. How we know it's a square is because there are four sides as being marked equal. So now, again, we're going to use the law of detachment. And on these, assume the first part is true. If a dog goes out to play in the woods, then the dog will get dirty. Carrie's dog, Spot, goes out to play in the woods. So Spot will get dirty. So basically, this part matches this part. That matches. So Spot will get dirty. That's your law of detachment. Okay. If an animal is an ant, then the animal is an insect. A carpenter ant is a type of ant. What do y'all think? Yeah, exactly right. A carpenter ant is an insect. A carpenter ant is an insect. Okay, so then for the law of syllogism, this is when you have a series of conditional statements together. If it's 5 p.m., then it's almost time for dinner. If it's almost time for dinner, then you should stop watching TV. Like with my youngest son, I'd say, then you should stop playing Fortnite. Right. So the middles match, and so then you're left with the outsides. So if it's 5 p.m., then I should stop watching TV. Okay, so if it's raining, then the sidewalk will be wet. If the sidewalk is wet, then the sidewalk will be slippery. So the back of this one matches the front of this one, and so they have, if it's raining, then you put, then the sidewalk will be slippery. The sidewalk will be slippery. Okay. If the temperature is below 58 degrees, the heater will come on. If the heater comes on, the air inside will be dry. So the heater comes on, cancels. And so then you put the air inside will be dry. The air inside will be dry. Okay, pretty basic. Okay, and again, here's another explanation of the law of detachment. Again, assume the conditional statement is true. If it's Monday, then Jim has Taekwondo practice. The date is Monday, August 25th. So then you can say Jim has Taekwondo practice. Okay, if the animal is a whale, then the animal lives in the ocean. Daphne sees a beluga whale, or however you want to pronounce it. So the beluga whale lives in the ocean. The beluga whale lives in the ocean. All right. If you live in the city of Miami, then you live in the state of Florida. Yanni lives in Florida. Does that mean that Yanni lives in Miami? No. So then we put no conclusion. Yeah, so just because most of them work doesn't mean all of them do. The back is what matched instead of the front. Okay, could have been Fort Lauderdale or some other city. If a triangle has an angle with a measure greater than 90, the triangle is obtuse. In triangle GHI, the measure of angle HGI is 110. So we do meet the conditions of the first part, so then we're going to say this triangle GHI is obtuse. Triangle GHI is obtuse. Okay, a parallelogram is a rectangle if its diagonals are congruent. Lincoln draws a parallelogram on a piece of paper. That doesn't mean that Lincoln drew a rectangle, so we just put no conclusion. So it's easy, but just don't get sucked into thinking it's too easy. All right. Now here's another example of syllogism, but they take it one statement further because it said two or more conditionals. And so this one has P to Q, Q to R, and R to S. So what I did was I put a circle around the Q's and I put a circle around the R's. So we're left with P to S. So this looks like it'd be, extra sentences, but you're still left with only the front and the back. Alright, so for this one, if you're climbing Pikes Peak, then you're in Colorado. If you're in Colorado, then you're in the United States. So our backs match. So then we put, if you're climbing Pikes Peak, then you're in the United States. If you are climbing Pikes Peak, then you are in the U.S. If you're climbing Pikes Peak, then you're in the United States. Sounds obvious. Okay, the next one, if the leaves are falling from the trees, then it's fall. If it's September 30th, then it's fall. So notice this is a conclusion, and so is this. And so your backs match, and so there is no conclusion. No conclusion, since the backs match. There's no conclusion. All right. Number 8, if it is spring, then the leaves are coming back on the trees. If it is April 14th, then it is spring. I'm glad we have this question, because notice that this, I guess I'll go back to what we did before. This is a hypothesis, and this is a conclusion. And this is a hypothesis, and this is a conclusion. And just because they're in a different order doesn't mean that these don't match. Like, we still have the hypothesis match the conclusion. So we need to put, if it's April 14th, if it is April 14th, then the leaves are coming back on the trees. Then the leaves are coming back on the trees. So that's one of the more interesting ones, just because they wanted to try to trick you a little bit. Any questions? Okay, number 9 is a simple one again. If plugs plunder, then flags fret. If flags fret, then gops groan. This one, all I'm going to do is just cross this out, and I'm not going to rewrite it. It's basically, if plugs plunder, then gops groan. So it's a little weird, so all I'm going to do is cross out those, because it is the back of one of them and the front of the other. Okay, number 10. If you make a 95 on the next test, you will pass the course. If you pass the course, you will not have to take summer school. And so again, in these notes, I see the back of this one matches the front of this one, and I'm not going to bother rewriting it. If you make a 95 on the next test, then you will not have to take summer school. Okay, so now another kind of interesting one, number 11. Use both laws to make a valid conclusion from the following series of true statements. Explain your reasoning and which statements you used in your reasoning. If an animal is an insect, then it has a head, thorax, and abdomen. If an animal is a spider, then it has a head and an abdomen. If an animal has a head, thorax, and abdomen, then it has 6 legs. So what I noticed about that is these 3 match these 3 here. And then your statement 4 is Humberto saw an insect called a grasshopper. So the one that's not related at all is the spider. And so we put the grasshopper has a head, thorax, and 6 legs. Oh, thorax, abdomen, and 6 legs. And so, to abbreviate things, I'm just going to say, I'm going to circle 2 and say unused. So we used 1, 3, and 4. And we used both laws. Okay, so now we're done with those notes. What I'd like you to do to start with is, I know I don't have my notes printed for 2.5, but I'd like you to tear out 55 and 57 to get ready for Monday. Also, you should know that there's going to be a bell ringer on Monday on 2.4. And there's one other thing I want to check with y'all.